Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jan Moré and my co-host, Mona Duncan, and we are here for another edition of Greet the Week. And today, Mona will be leading us in the discussion. So, Mona, what's on your mind today?
Well, I thought that we would look at the fact that how some, habits are good and habits are not so good.
Right.
It depends on how we use them or how that we kind of, brushing our teeth every day is a good habit to feel all fuzzy mouth if we don't, and so go in and brush. But then there are some habits that we fall into that are not so good, and we want to change them, but we don't know how to change them. So I thought today we would
change them.
That's what?
And it's difficult to change them.
It can be. It can be. And what makes it so difficult is part of that difficulty, our mindset toward it, and how difficult and how hard we see it as being as overcoming it. And so I thought today we would look at helping ways that we can help the community to help us overcome those things that we have decided are not so good for us, whether it is, from the micro to the macro. And how we can change our mindset, how we can begin to incorporate others to help them give us advice. But one of the things is we need to give them permission.
Right. Yeah.
We need to give them permission. We need to let them know, who is our mentors? Who are those supportive family members?
Yeah.
And
that's supposed to help us if we decide that we want to do something different, to let people know that we want to make those changes. Because if it's all in our head, it's so easy for us to back down when things get difficult. Whereas if we engage others to help us, then they can kind of move us along. But you're right, we need to give them permission because it's very easy to get angry.
Right. Give them permission and let them know up front that we have selected them to be a help to us. Whether it's a supportive family member, and to distinguish which ones are supportive and which ones are not. Mm-hmm. And it's not that the one that's not quite so supportive is, less value as a human being, but the fact that if they're not supporting you in your goals, whatever it is, then maybe you don't want to tell them that you're out to, set the world on fire, because they may be trying to put the fire out before it even gets going. And then also mentors, people that we can see and look at, and who should we select as our mentors? And then skilled help. Who do we go to, and when do we need to go to some skilled help to get some additional input? And
so, Mother, have you had a mentor, and how did you go about finding someone to mentor you?
Well, that is a question that I like to throw out to my audience whenever I'm talking about mentors. Do they need to be someone we know personally? So we can just discuss it. Is it someone we need to know personally? And does that mean that they are perfect in every area of life? Or do they also have flaws, but they have overcome something or either they overcame something, or they were not tempted to go into the negative that we went into to start with? So it's someone in our life that we choose. It can be someone we know up close and personal and ask them to come on and be a mentor to us and for us. Or it can be, someone living or dead. Someone we've read about, someone we know about from the news, someone we know about from history, that overcame or that persevered or that succeeded in a very difficult challenge, and begin to look at how they did it and what some of their philosophies of life was. And then how can I adapt that to my own individual life? And it's also realizing that they were human beings, that, there were times they became discouraged. There were times they broke bounds or whatever. Mm-hmm. That it was the coming back to what was the original goal, what was the original intent, what was deep down in the heart that we wanted to change. So, and then also, thinking about, sometimes I'll just throw it out to the audience. Well, who would you consider a mentor? Do they have to be living or dead? And one guy said, well, my granddad, but his granddad was no longer alive, but he could think about what he knew about his history and how that really could help him to overcome the negatives in his life, the challenges.
So, but if you have somebody who's dead, who you really admired, and you use them as a role model, then how do you stay on track? Because then there's nobody there to push you or challenge you to.
Well, that can just be one of many.
Okay.
You know, look around for a flesh and blood person that you can maybe see or talk to, or a sports figure. And again, there's many things about sports figures to be admired, but there are also some things about the same sports figure that would say, no, I don't think I want to incorporate that. So it's to be selective. It is to be selective. And if, you know, even in going for professional help, if it doesn't meet your need, if it's not fulfilling, you know, if it's not helping you to make progress, then it's time to say, I'll look elsewhere. And it's the same thing with selecting those mentors or in the supportive family member, you know. But I suggest letting them know up front that, you know what, I'm asking you, and then let them know the challenges that you're facing or the things that you're trying to overcome. And then,
before we leave the deceased mentor thing, I've also heard quite a few people say, or even if somebody's all the way across the country, when they're making a decision, they'll say, well, I wonder what my mom would have done, or I wonder what my grandfather would have done, or I know I'm going against them and it's a little bit less comfortable to make that decision.
Exactly. And then that brings to my mind a story that I heard one time about this teacher, that there was a little child in her class that was young, and the little child was just loved the teacher so much and always had to be right by her and everything. And anyway, it was story time, and the little kid would always come and sit right beside her and want to hold her hand and, you know, help turn the pages and all this kind of stuff. And the teacher just had to put a stop to that because, you know, all the other children loved her too. And so she told him one day, she said, no, she said, I want you to sit, we're in a circle, I want you to sit across the room from me so I can look at you and you can look at me, and, you know, I can see all the children, and we'll let, you know, others sit up here beside me. And the little boy just couldn't do it. Oh, I don't think I could. She said, yeah, I think you can. And she encouraged him. And so he's sitting beside her on the other side of the room, and she's reading the story. And all of a sudden, the little boy stands up and he says, teacher, you're right. I can love you from over here.
Aw.
And so as we detach, you know, we've talked about that before, that we need to detach from some of these things that are so difficult for us. If I just give a little more room to it, a little more space to it, I can see that I can still be involved, but not be so attached. So that we can see that we can receive that love, we can see that affirmation through memory as well as through actuality.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point there too. Is sometimes we get ideas in our head with the way things ought to be, and we just believe it so much, but it just takes somebody to very gently push us and say, why don't you try something else for a while and see if you can't make that work for you as well.
Exactly. Did I lose? You
lost your video. I still
Yes.
hear you.
Well, I wonder. Oh, okay.
There you are.
Yeah, I inadvertently hit something up here that you're talking about that, which I have 10 points here that I thought we would, you know, just kind of touch on today. And one is that, you know, so sometimes you have to believe in yourself and you believe in someone else. Is sometimes we say, when I see it, I'll believe it. Well, if we flip that around, you know what? When I believe it, I'll begin to see it. And that's no matter what it is, you know, whenever we talk so much about choosing our thoughts. Oh, I can't do that. I can't choose my thoughts. Well, when you begin to believe that you might could, there is that little possibility of, then there are things that we can begin. When I can begin to believe that I could change, when I can believe that I could sit across the room with them, having to be right there and touching and so intimately involved in. When I begin to believe that I can grow to that dimension, when I begin to believe that I can climb that mountain, that I can overcome that difficulty, then we begin to see it, at least begin to see it in a non-complete manner. Okay? But we can begin to see it, begin to see that potential, that possibility, begin to see our own potential.
Beginning to open up to it, that maybe I'll consider that.
Right. Opening up to it. And so it goes back with my number one point that it was going to bring out is that we accept ourselves as we are, warts and all.
That's a tough one.
We just accept the fact, not that we don't want to, you know, put a Band-Aid on it or do something to help make it more, or maybe even have it surgically removed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not that accepting it means this, it's mine, I own it. Now what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
What am I going to do about it? And
I think that's another huge thing now about accepting ourselves the way we are, because now with modern technology, it's so easy to make changes to our appearance. And we think that this little change that's going to happen is going to make everything all better. And all of a sudden, I'm not going to be so unhappy because my nose now has a prettier shape or whatever it is. My bags, I'm going to get rid of them.
Exactly.
And it's like, just learn to accept you for who you are. I'm as old as I am, and I look this way because I've lived a full life. And
Exactly.
instead of trying to find this quick fix out there that I think is going to heal everything and make it all better, but I haven't changed anything, and I'm right back to where I started.
I know there was a time in my life when I didn't like my nose, and people say, "Oh, well, you're crazy. What's wrong with your nose?" And you know what? I was crazy.
Yeah.
I was crazy. But the thing of it is whenever we begin to focus on something and we don't like it, then we're going to see it as not liking it until we begin to think about it differently. And as I began to think about it differently, it was looking at that, well, it works. It works. And just because my brother said that my nose didn't grow because I was so nosy, you know what? I could do something about the nosiness.
Right.
But that's something that needs to be fixed. That needs something that is learning to respect boundaries and not just walk in without knocking and so forth and so on. But often we take it as something that it's me, and it is me. But it's something more than the physical. It's something more. It's more attitudinal, and it's accepting the fact
within you.
Yeah, and it's accepting who we are. Small nose, nosiness. Okay, it's the both and then looking at what can I do, and or is it prudent to do it? Can I get surgery? Can I highlight it differently, makeup wise?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something in my inward being that could put a boundary to?
Yeah.
And sometimes, unless we're told those things and mention those things, we're not even willing to look at them. And sometimes, whenever it's brought up, we just automatically want to say, "Well, that's not true," and we go with and not accepting ourselves. It's like I'm going to grow into it, and someday someday I will do this, someday I will do that, someday I will be this, be that. But what that's doing is that's putting off our growth.
Exactly.
It's not accepting our wholeness right here, right now, today. And it's only as we accept our wholeness. I am whole. I am completely me. It's not that there's not things that don't need to be worked on, but I am whole. It's as though whenever I get to that point, then I'll be whole and then my life will begin. Well, no, it begins right here, right now, today.
Yeah.
And it's accepting that and being open to the feedback that we get. And even when we allow someone to be our mentor, we ask them to be, and they remind us that we have asked them, how do we receive that? And it's letting ourselves know that if I have asked someone to help me set a boundary and I'm bucking up against that boundary and pushing it like crazy, I need to respect the fact that they're seeing something I am not choosing to see.
Yeah. And of course, you may not be ready to make that change either. And that's to be able to admit that and maybe talk about it.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think too, though, while we give people permission, which I do think is extremely important, I think there are also certain days when we just know that we're not as strong as we need to be to hear things. And I think that at that point, as you said, rather than getting mad at the person, just say, you know what, today I'm not there. I know you were going to tell me something. I'll do better and attempt to be stronger tomorrow, but I do want you to still keep looking. Just something like that. So there's a strategy, because there are certain days, if somebody, as many critiques as I've had, I can still be very sensitive on a particular day.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time I welcome the feedback. But
Right.
for whatever reason on that day, I'm not where I really need to be personally.
But for you to be aware of it, that's important.
Well, yeah.
To say something, yeah.
Right. And if you are privileged to be someone's mentor, if they have asked you to help them set a boundary and so forth, and they say something like that, I'm just not quite as strong today, and I know you were going to say that, and I just can't hear it right now, then we need to be gracious enough to say, okay, catch you later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, because the tendency is to do the opposite. No, you need to hear it today.
Right.
You told me to catch.
That's right, you told me.
And I'm doing what you told me, what you gave me permission to do.
Yeah. I was in a staff meeting one time, and there was something that I spoke up and I said something to the degree. I said, "Well, do you want to know what I think?" And then, they knew me enough to kind of know where I was coming from, and the person said, "No, I don't." And so I backed off, and we went on with the
probably already knew what you were going to say, though. Anyway, right?
Yeah, I think they knew. They know what I kind of preach on. Anyway, about 3 days later, or it was several days later. Okay, my phone rang. And I picked up the phone, and I picked up the phone, and the voice on the other end said, "Okay, what do you think?" Because that day, that individual was a little bit stronger. Mm-hmm. And we need to, that goes back to accepting who we are. Accept the fact whenever I am more vulnerable, so that I can speak up and say, I need a little bit more compassion today.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to whether it's the mentor-mentee relationship or whatever, it's back to whichever role you're in, you're still a teacher and a learner at the same time.
Exactly.
And I think your point of having the strength to back off is extremely important from the mentor side.
Exactly. Knowing when to not only back off, when to even not speak.
Sure. Good point.
Yeah. And maybe just come alongside and, hey, let's just take a walk together. Just because we are sensitive. We are sensitive to those things. And it's that as we grow into it. Mm-hmm. And I like to always look at energies whenever we begin to. There's two energies that just show up, when we make a decision. One is, boy, I'm gung-ho, I'm going to get out there and really do it. And then there's the other one, who do you think you are that you can do that? Both of those energies show up. And so people say, well, I'm trying. But unfortunately, sometimes, trying is lying, because we just use it as an excuse, because we maybe made a little bit of an effort, but it wasn't enough to get that I can do it energy there.
Well, it's also a way to when you don't want to say, no, I don't want to do it, you say, I'm trying, and then it makes the other person think that you are interested in doing it, but really you're not.
Right.
And going by the energy, Mona, I found that especially with students, but with some adults too, when they say I'm trying, I just very gently say, well, does trying change things, or does doing change things?
Right.
Lots of times they'll get a sheepish grin because they know I'm not asking the question for me to put them down. I'm asking it for them to look at their own accountability.
Right. Yeah, monitor our feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Not only our feedback from others, but our feedback from our own body. Because we know. We know when we're what's good for us and what is not so good for us. We know.
But we don't always like it, Mona.
I know. And that's whenever that I'm trying energy comes on, that I'm really not, because I am lying. But it just sounds good, because I don't want you to not hold me in high regard. Mm-hmm. And if you think I'm just sloughing off, you may not. And always be the teacher as well as the student, because everything is, it's a two-way street. It's about giving and receiving. It's just that as we as we think we give too much, it's giving and receiving, but as we think we're giving too much, we start the giving and the taking. And it's also, as we think we're not receiving enough from help, or receiving too much help, receiving too much of this, we kind of give up too. Because anytime we do for others what they can do for themselves, we really help to cripple them.
Yeah.
We make them dependent on us, and then they get mad at us because they're dependent on us, and we've set them up for that.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've started watching for myself. When you see somebody struggling, and then you think you're being helpful to help them do whatever they're doing, and it's like they may want to do it themselves, and when you try to help them, and it's not only with kids, it's with adults.
Exactly.
And you're robbing them from being able to accomplish something and feel good about themselves. So sometimes I'll look and I'll say, do you need any help? And then if they say yes, I'll help them. But if they say no, I got it, then I just let them be.
Right. And sometimes you need to just walk off.
Yeah.
Because and I don't mean stomp off, I mean walk off. Let them do it on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that we do need a community. Without you, we just need each other.
Yeah.
We need each other. And when those negative things do happen, release it. Don't keep carrying it in our head as to what someone said or what they did or whatever. As we begin to release it, begin to, and sometimes we need to change our playground, change our playmates. That would be a better influence over us or with us. And it's not an abandonment of the others, and it's not looking down on them. It's just realizing that if this is not good for me, then I need to be in an atmosphere where I can grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are responsible for our own growth. We are responsible for our own decisions in the long run. Even though others may have been inputs and influencers, the bottom line is we made the choice.
Yeah, and that's another difficult choice to make, when you realize that you're not growing from whatever group you're in, whether it's a family group or a work group or just a group of peers, and to say, I'm not growing here. I need to move somewhere else, and that's tough.
It can be. It can be very, very tough. And in time, there will probably be, a few that would come back with you. And again, I just look at things from so many different directions. It's not only for self personally leaving a difficult situation, but working with federal prisoners that, have been so shunned by family and so forth, or they think they have, but in the long run, they haven't. There is a lady that came to my teaching, Moré.
I know her.
Yes, a dear person. She's a songwriter, and so I bought her album. But anyway, or one of them. Anyway, I said, well, would you just sing a song for us? So she got her guitar out, brought it down, and sang, and it was just beautiful. And I don't know if I can remember all of the words to it or not, but it was so powerful about how we need community and a safety net. That it started off, the hat is hanging on the wall. It's hanging on a nail. The nail is jammed into the wall. The wall is holding up the house where you were born. Mm. The house is sitting on the land. The land goes down to the road. The road leads into the town where you were born. And the town stretches out to the mountain. The mountain goes down through the country where you were born. And it goes on and on. And then there was little choruses in there. Is you are not so far, though it may seem so from where you are, you're not so far from home. And then there's more to it, that and it goes on into the celestial, that you're out in the outer space and you're looking down. It's in the world where you were born.
Wow.
You're not so far, though it may seem so from where you are. You are not so far from home. And so it's finding home within us, yes, yes, yes. But it's also finding home within that ornery little group of people that we are a part of, both born into and married into. And that they have our interest at heart more than we may realize, just as we probably have their interest at heart more than we're willing to admit. And realizing that we do need each other, but we need it in caring, loving, interactive ways, not in ugly, off-putting, dissing ways. And it is learning that we start out by loving ourselves. Again, accepting self, warts and all. And that maybe having a small nose is not the problem.
Right.
And when I get to the real problem, and do something.
Once we realize that, we're like, what was I thinking to think that changing my nose would have done so much for me?
Yeah. And I mean, maybe it would, because there are a lot of things that we can do for ourselves that does help a lot. And if it does, go for it.
Yeah.
But don't use that as the determinant as to your value. We cannot use any one thing as the determinant of our worth and value as a human being on planet Earth. I was talking about community and accepting ourselves. I read an article, and I brought the paper with me because I was going to share this if it came up, and it does. It was an article, Elizabeth Smart. Are you familiar with her? She was abducted when she was 9, and anyway, she now has written a book. It's called Where There's Hope. Talking about hope in the midst of difficulties and so forth, And she said that she was one couple of things that she had in her article that had influenced her with the hope was that there were a Holocaust survivor. And the Holocaust survivor said that there are 2 types of survivors. There's the one who did not die, and then there's the one who lives.
Yeah.
You see, in all of our things that we overcome, there's the ones that overcome and, we're still living. And then there's the one that lives.
Mm-hmm.
There's the one that lives. And then one of the other things that she had in this article was that she was talking about Marutu Karmart. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Who, when her village in Sierra Leone had been raided and rebels cut off her hands. Cut off her hands. Yet she told me, quote, "I don't want anyone to pity me. I can do all the things that other people do. I take care of my daughters. I cook our meals. I clean our apartment. I have a full life." And never give up on hope. Never give up on hope. Never give up on the fact that, we're a part of this situation, both the positive and the negative. We're a part of it. And we can be overcome by it, or we can overcome. And my philosophy in life is don't cope, overcome. That coping is that negative energy that just tries. And that overcoming is getting the energy that, even if it's just a small step, even if it's just a little thing, I can do it. I can do it. Because I am a whole person. Now, someday I'll be a little bit healthier. Someday I will have different thoughts to think. But as I am right now, I am whole. I am complete. And it is appreciating our multidimensionality about us. And also, about others. We're a safety net is something that's there to keep us from self-destructing. And even if it is a negative, or at least we take it as a jab, or maybe it's a jab because it hurt a sore spot that we weren't willing to acknowledge.
We might be surprised how we respond, how what feelings come up when somebody mentions something. Yeah,
right.
You realize it was there.
Right. And so acknowledge that
Yeah.
and say, what was that metaphysical comment? What was that elusive comment? What was it really targeting that is something I really can look at and work on? And then, sometimes whenever we say things to people, we may be giving a jab, and we know we're giving a jab.
Yeah.
And be aware of that, and, quit being a jabber. Be a healer, not a jabber.
Yeah.
It's not that I will put you down so I can be a one-up. It's really putting us down too. And so it's working together for the good of the whole.
Right. Yeah.
And it is.
And that's hard to keep in mind sometimes, because we always are attuned to what our needs are and what we want to say and how our feelings are hurt. But then we have to consider the other person and the importance of that relationship. Do I want to keep that relationship strong, or am I feeling so hurt that it's worth jeopardizing our relationship and having you not speak to me for a few days or whatever?
Yeah. And
as somebody who has a reputation for jabbing,
and who's that, Bob?
But more and more, it comes back to, even if it's not taken personally by one person, if you're in a group of 28 or 30, you don't know what some of the other people have gone through.
right.
And that's something that I constantly have to work on, because sometimes something will just pop in. It's funny. 99% of the people will think it's funny, but the one or two don't. And like I said, it's back to what kind of a person do I want to be, regardless of how somebody takes it. And then even if, like, for example, I say something to you, Jan, and Mona takes offense, but you don't, I can just say, well, so what? Well, is that the kind of person I really want to be?
Exactly.
And so it's just that constant self-evaluation that you both keep bringing up.
Self-evaluation, but not self-condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
It's to get honest with ourselves, and that goes back to accepting who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And getting honest with it. And as I get honest with it, then I'm in a position to heal. And if it's healed, then there's no need to have those jabs. It's a backwards, crazy, mixed up law,
Mm-hmm.
of trying to heal something by hurting someone else, and it just doesn't work. This never works. It
doesn't.
And sometimes,
side by side.
and I'm really not being sensitive to this, sometimes my jabs or my comments would be to keep me mentally sharp. They weren't really even intended to be at somebody, but my mind would click. Yeah, and I'm talking about when I'm doing workshops. Because when you teach the same thing for 30 years, if you're not growing, but at the same time, there are some components that you just don't change much. The content doesn't change much. And I would find if I was doing, 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row, the longer I went, the more I was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, like I say, intended, but it was taken that way sometimes. And again, I have to continue to grow in that area.
You have to continue to, and you also have to take
if I want to get better.
Yeah.
You have to be.
I don't have to continue. I don't have to change if I don't want to.
Right.
But I do. So.
But if you really do want to change, then it is imperative that we monitor feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only just our feedback, but it's all those around us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big thing to monitor.
Are we growing together, or are we driving each other further apart?
Right. And again, sometimes, because I have been around so long with certain groups, sometimes people are intimidated to say anything to me if I have crossed the line.
Right.
And, that's not necessarily good either. But it happens, and that's the whole point of having these discussions, is so we can self-evaluate also.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, our time is running out. And
I was just going to say, great topic.
Oh, well, thanks. We may continue because I had 10 points and we only went on 2 of them, which is okay.
You got plenty of material for future.
Yeah. But as we are calling a end to our time together today, I just want to pass on some advice from a young man that I met just last week. And he has a life of felons, just, little felonies here and there, and got involved with bigger felons and all this. And then one day he was in a difficult situation, and he honestly thought that he was released to go, and turns out he wasn't. And because he had been involved with so many little felons, they threw the book at him, literally. I mean, over and above, threw the book at, as in life imprisonment.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
And this guy was been imprisoned for 18 years, and he got a presidential pardon.
Oh.
And, but it was with conditions. And the conditions was that he take a 500-hour life skills course.
Wow.
So that put him still in prison for an additional 2 years. And what he learned in that life skills course, plus, just life and everything else, and learning to evaluate and to, he has one of the sweetest spirits. And so I was interviewing and talking to him to get his history and asking him some things. And I says, what has helped you to keep your good mental health in all of these situations? Some that was by choice, and you were pretty rotten yourself and all this kind of stuff. Let's get honest here. And he said he had not allowed uncontrollable circumstances to eat him.
Mm.
So those uncontrollable circumstances,
Yeah.
let's not allow them to eat us, even if we're in those situations that we can't change. Even if we are teaching the same thing for 30 years. Let's keep it fresh within ourselves and keep that energy of growing in ways that are not jabbing, but in ways that are life-producing for us as well as for others.
That's a good way to pull it all together, Mona.
Just back off. So, thanks. Join us next week.
Okay, thank you. We'll
Thanks to other Mona for joining.
Yes, other Mona. It's a delight to have you with us.